How come I lost casting?
No, we're at a... You have a kid last week? Last week. Last week.
You want me to wait?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was up there.
Yeah.
Were you
so-
trying to run it on an automated loop?
Yeah.
I don't know if that might be pushing what you're trying to run it at. Steve and Tanya, the other thing is maybe try muting for a moment. I just want to see if the voice boots it off. I think you might be pushing it, trying to make it automate.
All right, we'll leave it there.
All right.
We are ready, sir.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right, welcome. This is the School District of Prescott Board of Education regular meeting. We've been in closed session since 6:30. We are on item E, Pledge of Allegiance. Vicki, would you care to lead us?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before I move on to the next item, I just wanted to call out, you'll notice that we have two board members that are virtual tonight, and I just wanted to call out, we do have a policy for that we adopted last year for policy 167.1. I'm not going to read it, but it's a policy that allows us to have a meeting such as this in a hybrid mode where we have several people on site and several people off site. So we will move forward. I just want to call that out. We're going to move forward to item F, recognition of visitors. Is there anybody that would care to be recognized at this time? Okay. All right. Let's move on to item G, good news. Dr. Spicuzza.
Yes, it's my pleasure to share a little bit of the good news from superintendent's seat. Although we're in a COVID era, right? It has been like a fire drill throughout the day and weeks, and we've had to make some tough decisions, as many of the community is aware. We'll continue to be sending out some additional information this Friday with regards to just asking people to be mindful of the gatherings as we move into the holiday season, and to the degree they can to mitigate and refrain from crossing additional families and large gatherings, as it will ultimately impact our ability to keep our schools open and our students primarily face-to-face, where I believe the evidence is that students learn better and perform better when they're in our buildings with highly qualified teachers. That said, I was reminded that madness is the result of not of uncertainty, but of certainty. So it is a very fluid situation, and we'll continue to provide updates throughout these times. We currently will have our middle school in virtual programming through January 11th, and that gives us time just to make sure that we have a smooth transition both for our students and our staff. Things that I wanted to acknowledge is the gifts and donations. Franz and Karen Alt-Peter have donated $3,000 to our Angel Fund. The First National Bank has donated $400 to our Angel Fund. And Community Ed, Penny Peterson facilitated a trunk and treat with 250 to 260 kids that participated in Halloween on that very blustery day. And then I would like Mr. Kozmowski just to come up, if he would, and just give a quick 30-second update with regards to a grant application that was in partnership with Freedom Park that was awarded to us from the Prescott Foundation.
Yeah, so in partnership with Freedom Park and Israel Haas, and along with Bailey Ronda from the city of Prescott, one of the things that we've been looking at in partnership is to expand trail opportunities within Prescott. When one of the identified areas is the high school property where we already have some trails in terms of our cross-country trail, and then some opportunities there to expand our trail with some ADA compliant trails as well. So as we look at a long-term partnership with the city of Prescott and with the Friends of Freedom Park, one of the things that we looked at is just doing some trail mapping as a first, just a feasibility study, and then some potential trail mapping of what that could potentially look like. And that could be used for generations to come. So that grant that we applied for, we were partially funded by the Prescott Foundation, and we thank them for that, and that will get our mapping started. We already have our cross-country map, or cross-country trail already established, and then we're gonna look at ways to move around the trail, both for, again, walking trails for ADA compliancy, and then potentially some either walking, hiking, and single-track mountain bike trails on the school property, which then eventually could potentially connect to some of the city property, and then all the way to Freedom Park itself, all the way from the school. So that's a long-term plan that we have, and this is the first steps in that plan, is to get some feasibility studies done and some mapping. And we thank the Prescott Foundation for bestowing upon us some of that funding so we can get the ball rolling on that project.
Do you want to go ahead and continue with the
Sure.
Malone Elementary?
Yeah, good news from Malone Intermediate. Over the last few weeks here, we've had our first rounds of our National Spelling Bee as well as our National Geography Bee. Geography Bee is open to grades 4 and 5. Spelling Bee is 3, 4, and 5, and the top 10 from each school, or each grade level have been identified, and they'll be moving to round 2, which will happen in January. Another thing that we've been working on over the last several weeks at Malone Intermediate is working on student behavior in our Cardinal Pride. And we had a building goal. Every class was given point values for behaviors that we were looking for them to emulate in the hallway and in the classroom. And we were looking at, as an entire school celebration, if we could reach 80% of those points earned, which after 3 weeks we did manage to earn on the last day. And then we had two groups that, or 2 classrooms that made 90% threshold. And and for us, what that's going to look like is just some added time, either for some sort of an experience. So every classroom is a little bit different, and the kids are looking at what would they like for their experience. Some of our things that we're going to potentially do is sledding, snowshoeing, some readathons, and things like that. So we're looking at having an experience as a class versus a reward in terms of something, in terms of, like a movie or technology day. I think we get enough of those technology days at home. So we're looking at other experiences that classrooms will be partaking in. And that's the good news from Malone Intermediate.
Hi, Sarah Dusick, principal at Malone Elementary. First, I'd like to start by publicly thanking the staff at Malone Elementary. They have been super flexible with what we've asked them to do, many of them having to step out of their defined roles in order to fill in places where we have holes. And it's just been awesome to see everybody come together and make sure that we're able to stay open and safe in our school. Last board meeting, we talked about doing a heavy shift into the academic side of things, since we were seeing that we were able to safely be at school. And our interventions have really picked up. Students are able to go see Mrs. Smith and work with Ms. Zarnstorff for interventions. And then just this week for our 1st and 2nd graders, we added extensions with Mrs. Jansen. So for those students who need some enrichment and some extra push, they're able to meet with her twice a week now moving forward. And then on Tuesday next week, we're looking forward to collaborating with our Malone Parent Committee to continue our turkey bingo tradition. Obviously, there will be some changes that we have to do because of our COVID protocols, but I've already heard students in the hallway say how excited they are for turkey bingo, and we're just excited that we get to continue some of that normalcy that we've had in the past and have things to really look forward to moving forward.
Kyle Lego, Prescott Middle School. I want to start off by thanking the middle school students and families for making our transition to 100% virtual in a very short amount of time. The transition to virtual has been absolutely amazing on both the staff and the family and student part. Our students, our attendance has been in that 96 to 97% range for the past 2 days. They're doing a great job of logging on, of engaging in our activities, and of doing the right thing. Along with that, our staff has made that transition from the hybrid model to the virtual model, and they also have done just a really, really remarkable job of getting their lessons set up and finding those engaging activities for our students to engage in. Ms. Hillebrand, Ms. Simon have put together a virtual library. Students can go ahead and go to the Prescott Middle School page, go to the Media Center tab, and you can request books through through the virtual library, and they can be picked up and or dropped off at school. You also have the option of downloading and reading online books through our SORA program, and so thank you to Ms. Hillebrand and Ms. Simon for setting that up. And really, that's my good news for the week, is that we have made a very nice transition so far to our virtual learning. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Hey, good evening. Josh Figge, Prescott High School. Good news. I'd like to echo what each one of my colleagues said about our staff and students. This week we are virtual. Our students have been amazing, and the flexibility that both our students and our families have displayed, not only this past week but this year, has been pretty phenomenal, and it really shows the resiliency of our kids to learn under a multitude of different models in conditions that aren't always easy. And then our staff, who I can echo are the same way, flexible, and I would say learning a lot of new skills and polishing those up, and just when they polish up some new skills, we ask more of them. And so it hasn't always been easy, but I commend all of them. For Prescott High School, this past month we hosted a couple different events. To recognize our academic high achievers, we had 2 separate academic awards breakfasts to recognize students who last year had earned academic high honors and been inducted into the National Honor Society. So we formally inducted them into the National Honor Society this past month in 2 separate physically distanced ceremonies, fed them breakfast, recognized them, and then did the same thing for our students who had achieved high honors. And then 2 weeks ago we had a very COVID physically distanced homecoming. So we had to modify a lot of the things that our typical homecoming would typically have. But looking at kind of the social, emotional health of our kids too, we know that there's a balance to strike, so we tried to plan out some appropriate activities for them. We had some lunch activities that kids were pretty engaged in, some hallway decorating that took place, some homeroom activities, a powder puff, and then a very cool crowning at the halftime of the football game that was live streamed. So a really nice job to all the students involved and all the staff that helped out with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Figge.
Couple things in the world of student services. First of all, just wanted to give a shout out to Barb Bowen. This past summer, we participated in an Indicator 14 post-high school outcomes survey, where we basically just surveyed all of our special education students who graduated in the 2018-19 school year, and basically got some outcomes. And based on those results, we received a $7,000 grant or award from the state of Wisconsin for our results. So again, great job for her, just reaching out and tracking down all those students. It was quite an undertaking, and she did a great job. And a shout out to our special education teachers for preparing our students for the next phase of life. Also, just like Mr. Figge and Mr. Igo and the other principals shared, I just want to give a huge shout out to our special education staff. This past 2 week and a half, we've moved to virtual programming, and I just really want to appreciate the work that they've done in being flexible, advocating for students. We are bringing some students on for face-to-face instruction, students with disabilities who really struggle with that virtual mode of programming. So really want to give them a huge shout out. Also a really big shout out to Tim for just figuring out how transportation is going to work in a crazy environment for Tina, and figuring out meals. It's been a lot of work, and a lot of people have really stepped up to the plate as far as making our students with disabilities needs being met. So just wanted to thank a lot of different people.
Thank you, Mr. Inouye.
Matt Smith, Activities Director. Just want to start off, shout out to all our fall athletes and coaches for the professionalism and on the coaches side of things, and then with our student athletes, just the dedication, the positivity, and the flexibility that they all showed this fall in making activities happen. Some kudos to them. Also want to say congratulations, our girls golf team, who we had in last board meeting as state champs, also is academically named all-state. So not only are they talented on the course, but also in the classroom and in their studies with that. Then we had some all-conference nominees from the meetings there last week for both volleyball and football. For volleyball, we had 2 second-team honorees, senior Isabella Lenz and freshman Reese Patak. And then for football, we had senior Austin Fox was named first team on both sides of the ball, and senior Sean Thomason was named honorable mention for defense. So I think they all deserve a round of applause there virtually. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Patty, Jim?
The Student Council just wrapped up the homecoming festivities, and we got a lot of positive feedback on that. It was quite successful. And besides homecoming, the majority of our meeting was focused on listening to student input. One of our goals this year as Student Council is to survey a lot of the students and hear their thoughts. So that was what the majority of our meeting was discussed about. So.
Thank you. All right, we are on to item H, school business. So the first item is the consent agenda. In the consent, we have minutes, board checks, appointed deputy clerk for elections, Neola volume 29, number 2, technical corrections, and a personnel update. Is there anything that the board would like to pull out of the consent agenda? If not, I will adopt the consent agenda. Are there any objections? No objections. The consent agenda is adopted. So we will move on to item 2, employment.
Yes, at this time, we have one hire, Matt Rankin, for the high school science position for the remainder of the 2021 school year.
Steve, any questions or comments?
Just where does Matt come from, Dr. Spaguzza?
He is a new graduate, right?
Correct. He is currently in Menominee at Stout. He's lived all the United States and even in Europe.
All right, Tanya?
No questions. Welcome, Matt.
Vicky?
No questions.
And Pat?
No questions. Welcome.
All right, we'll need a motion to approve.
I move to approve the employment of Matt Rankin.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Item 3, consider first reading of policy 2266, Title IX regulations.
Yes, I'm going to have Mark Inouye come up and kind of help lead us a little bit in this discussion. Title IX regulations kicked in the fall. Every single district was provided a new Neola policy. It's quite lengthy because it is with regards to a complete overhaul with regards to the non-discrimination and basis of sex in educational programs or activities. We also have to have identified compliance officer, and based on legal advice, we have identified one male and one female. We've asked our HR director, Liz Roberts, to be one compliance officer, and it fits quite well with that position and title. And then Mark Inouye, because he also oversees not only the student services, but our Office of Civil Rights and other reports that are made at a state and federal level. Mark, are there some specific just areas that you want to touch on, and also how it dovetails? A lot of it is boilerplate, but there are some things with regards to also grievances and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the main things with the updated Title IX, and these are all regulations that were kind of updated in, I believe it was March of last year, with kind of a rollout date for earlier this year. A lot of the things didn't change, but they did update some of the definitions as far as kind of what sexual harassment comprises of. We did some training with our school staff on those definitions in August. And it does give kind of a boilerplate procedure as far as kind of what our requirements are as far as due process, protocols for making a report, for our follow-up as far as what we need to do as a district to follow up on those reports. Things like protective factors that are, speak to both the complainant and the accused. So some different things like that. So as Dr. Spikuza mentioned, a lot of this is boilerplate. It is very prescriptive as far as the exact protocol that we go through, and the training that we go through as well, and then also just kind of the notifications to the public. We are required now to have it very clear on our website as far as who the Title IX coordinators are, as well as on even our page that indicates what employment options are for staff and for potential job applicants. So as Dr. Spikuza mentioned, a lot of very prescriptively laid out procedures that you can read over if you want, but Liz and I are working on that, making sure that we're fully aware of it, making sure that the principals are all aware of it. There is kind of some duties as far as the investigator, the decision maker, and then the appeal decision maker that we're all working on, kind of identifying all those individuals as well. So I know that was a really high level overview. Any questions on that?
Tanya, do you have any questions for Mr. Inouye?
Nope, I read over it. It looks like, I don't know, pretty familiar language and stuff, so no questions.
Steve?
No questions.
Vicki?
No questions.
And Pat?
My only question is, so if this becomes a new policy, does this replace any of our existing, I would say, Title IX type policies? We have whatever, non-discrimination and selection of instructional materials, et cetera, et cetera. Does it replace any of them?
I believe so. So I think some of these policies are essentially before there really were, Title IX was law, but there really weren't any identified procedures for how we were required to go through and respond to complainants. So each district was kind of up to them, up on their own as far as the process they wanted to file. Now it does kind of lay it out. So I would say that this procedure is really showing us all the prescriptive things we need to do. I don't think this is necessarily replacing an existing policy, because there really wasn't an existing procedure that was laid out prior.
So there is, it is a difficult policy to review, only because it is 20 pages. There are 3 specific policies that are referenced, and unfortunately I didn't bring my hard copy, but on those we did cross-reference them with the current policies, and they're all in compliance and verified. It will replace the previous Title IX, however. So it basically will be, it is much more thorough, and as Mark was saying, prescriptive with regards to how the grievance policy and how it comes up, and whether or not it's reported to the superintendent, if it's any of the compliance officers, or to the board chair, or to the legal. And I think that's probably one of the decision points we'll have for you in December, because you have another policy that you're reviewing about who has authority to contact the district lawyers. And so right now the lawyers work on behalf of the board and the superintendent. So that's about the only one that I think would have to be refined at this time.
Okay, thank you.
And I assume that Neola kind of helped draft get the first draft of this ready for us?
Correct.
Okay, I have no questions. Thanks, Mr. Anyway.
Yep.
We'll need a motion.
I'll move to approve the first reading of Neola Policy 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that carries. Item 4, elect a WASB delegate and alternate delegate for January 2021 WASB convention.
Yes, so I'm going to ask one of our colleagues who is off-site, Steve Sizemore, and also Beth Linderholm, to kind of help walk us through this. As you know, on an annual basis, the Association of the School Boards and Superintendents meet down in Milwaukee. Due to the ongoing pandemic, it is going to be a virtual meeting, but even though it is a virtual meeting, there is still a school board delegate. And so we just wanted to, Steve, I believe you have participated over the last few years and also have participated as a CISA rep. So I just thought you might have some of the background to kind of explain in more detail on what your current status is with CISA or stepping forward for this winter.
Well, so knowing Mike is often attending, I figured he could do that for our district if no one else wants to. I'm going to be the CISA rep in that regard.
Yeah, I can certainly do it. I looked at my calendar and I'm open that day. So unless somebody else wants to be a part of the delegate assembly that night, I can certainly handle it. So somebody can, so I would be the delegate, and then do we need an alternate delegate too?
Correct.
And you cannot be the alternate delegate, Steve?
Probably wouldn't be a good idea.
Okay, so we'll need does anybody want to be the alternate in case for some reason I can't? It's on January 19th, 7 p.m., which is, it says Tuesday on there, so if anybody else wants to step up and be the alternate. But I mean, like I said, I looked at my calendar, it's open, so I should be able to make it.
I can be the alternate if need be.
Okay. All right, so somebody can make a motion then. Somebody that's not going to be the delegate, are they?
Okay, yep. So I move to approve Mike Matzik as the WASB delegate and Tanya Holub as the WASB alternate delegate.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. And we are on item 5, consider proposal to participate in Winter Middle Border Conference Athletics.
Yes, so I've asked our athletic director, Matt Smith, to pull together some information for you. We did this at the beginning of the year in fall. One of the major things that has changed is obviously the context with regards to burden rates and the amount of contagion that is occurring within Pierce County, and also the type of activities that we're going to engage in the winter are slightly different. They're indoors. And so he has put together a thorough walkthrough with regards to the different agencies that we're looking at, and we'll have a recommendation at the end and open it up for discussion. Matt, because I'm casting, you're just going to have to do the head bob for me to click.
I'll give you the point. Then
All right, thank you.
Thanks for having me here tonight to speak. Just kind of a preface here before we get into the slides. I do understand that the extracurricular activities right now would be an interesting topic, and trying to navigate those waters that we're in right now in a pandemic. My job as the activities director is to promote activities and student involvement that are meaningful and doing it in a safe manner, and I think that's very important to do. I do truly feel that we can do this, put on winter seasons here. Our coaches, our athletes, our advisors, they understand the importance of involvement and the responsibility and accountability that comes along with it, especially now in this day and age here today. They will do everything that they can do to be safe, and we will do our part as a community member and a hub of the community to stay safe. The social and emotional health does play a huge part in offering extracurriculars. It's important, especially if in a hybrid or in a virtual model, for these connections to be made through different activities and the relationship building that goes on, being in sports and different activities, extracurriculars across the board. Right now, currently at the high school alone, we have 120 plus students signed up for winter activities, boys and girls basketball, wrestling, dance team, forensics, National History Day. So over a quarter of our student population will be involved in some way or form there, and I think that's very important, and that's outstanding to see that commitment there. As I guide you through the slides here tonight, I'm going to outline the information and facts that have been gathered and that are of importance for us to take a look at. And just kind of in general, I hear from the public, from our stakeholders on this topic quite a bit, and it's to both extremes, whether it's how are we not going to have athletics this winter to what are we thinking having athletics, and everywhere in between. And so it's just a point that I do want to note there that I have heard from people, and understand where they're coming from with their concerns or their encouragement with everything involved there. As I go through this, I'm going to do my best to be balanced with the risk-reward during my presentation, though I do honestly feel that we can do this in a safe manner. We do have the people in place and the correct approaches laid out that we did both in the fall and through the summer, that we can be successful and safe. If we didn't have those things in place, either personnel or, like I said, certain approaches, I'd be honest with you and tell you that. And if we do have situations that arise, I will be direct. I will address it with coaches, with athletes, with advisors across the board, and find ways to be better so we're not put in situations that we're putting ourselves or others in danger there. We will obviously respect and honor any decisions made here at the school board and move forward collectively as a whole. So as I go through here, any questions that pop up, stop me. Any clarifications, let me know. I'm not going to bore you to death here reading the slides to you. Mr. Figge is going to hold me to that, he said. So I'll try to be brief as possible, but as thorough as possible, and go from there. So Rick, whenever you're ready.
All right.
Just kind of starting out here, the practice anticipated start dates. Middle school boys basketball has been going on since October 19th. Forensics had their first meeting November 10th, and they're looking to start here in the next coming weeks. And then high school girls basketball started this past Monday. So they've had 3 practices in. All have gone well, with what they need to do, their practices, their screenings, the masks, the distancing, following through with the disinfecting, you name it, across the board there. Next Monday, our high school boys basketball and high school wrestling team look to start up. And then our middle school wrestling, we're kind of floating around some dates depending on their first duel that they'll be wrestling in. But right now we're looking at November 30th. Our dance team is kind of a continuation from the fall, where they did a tremendous job following all the guidelines and approaches to be safe. And they're looking for their season here to kind of continue into the winter season as we go. Some updates here. I know it's kind of tough to read, but some things from the fall that we had in terms of COVID impact with our experiences there. Our high school volleyball team, we did have a 1-week pause due to some internal positive cases. So we did hit pause there for a week, and we did lose some contests. We were able to make a few of them back up, but that was one instance there that we did have some internal COVID on the team there, and we did have to hit pause. Our high school football team made it through swimmingly until the last week of the regular season. We played a game, and it turned out afterwards the opponent had a player test positive that did play in the game, and that led through close contact tracing. We had 13 players that were deemed close contact. With that being said, we did choose then to cancel our last week of our season, just being safe and moving forward there collectively there to end the year. For middle school sports, we had one of our middle school football teams had 12 players at the grade level quarantine as they were close cases from the classroom. It was not from a game, not from a practice, but from classroom. They were close contact. A few of our other sports had a handful of close contact tracing with no games or events impacted by that. It was all classroom related, but we were able to march on with all scheduled events there for that season. Athletics-based close cases for quarantine accounted for roughly a quarter or 1/4 of all our close contacts compared to close contacts with our school buildings. That's a tongue twister there. So basically athletics, when it came down to it for quarantines, was 1/4 compared to our close contacts for school, for our buildings across the board there with that, from classroom type close contact tracing. All of our sports were able to finish a majority of their scheduled events. I did talk about high school volleyball there having hit pause. And then our high school football team there with that last playoff game, that last week with us choosing to not move forward with that. Looking at, trigger points, what causes pauses, what ties into that. It's not really truly a metric. It's more of a collaboration in a case-by-case basis for that decision to be made from our school district administration, our district nurses, Pierce County Public Health, talking with our coaches, and all those decisions have the top priority as safety and health and the well-being of all involved with that. So with the winter sports here, that'd be a similar approach with that. Looking at if we get in a situation that there are some cases, some things we need to look at, we would look at pausing based on the information and collaboration of those individuals on what's the safest and best way to move forward there. One thing also people ask, how are we keeping people honest and transparent? We do our screeners for symptoms to start practice with everyone, and we do look at it. Part of our athletic code of conduct with our athletes is a true spirit of cooperation, and they sign that, and basically it's saying they're going to be honest, they're going to be upfront. It's a team first mentality, and so that's really one thing we look at, with that accountability there for being held, to a higher standard as being a team member with the well-being of everyone. Looking at that. This slide here, kind of similar to the one we looked at in the fall. This one replaces the fall guidelines though. The WA does lay out guidelines and considerations for the different activities to take a look at that they sponsor. It gives a protocol for return and participation. It's a thorough link if you go through the documents. Basically it talks about in general kind of what to look for, the symptoms, things to trace, how to go about that, a return to competition form, and then it lays out sport by sport things to look at for considerations. It's not foolproof, and the WA will be the first to say that, but it wants to get people looking at the big picture and the critical thinking and breaking down what really needs to be done in each district, at each team, and the things to keep in mind when you make decisions for moving forward in a safe manner. And we're open to everything on here to do it, to keep it safe, setting up the gym in certain configurations, our teams with the benches, bus seating, all the screening from top to bottom, the disinfecting, you name it, we're ready to do that. Having met with our winter head coaches at the high school, they are all on board. They understand the guidelines, the consideration, the approaches to keep everyone safe. They know we got to be flexible, they got to be nimble, they got to be positive, they got to keep that team and team first mentality. They got to be safe. It's things that they do in every other year, but now we just have COVID to also deal with, and it's something that they understand that they have to take extremely seriously to keep everyone safe and everyone involved, understanding that importance also. Pierce County Health, even though they're not advising winter sports to move forward, they're not going to leave us high and dry. They're going to make sure to work with us in our decisions, and that we can partner up to make sure everyone's staying safe. I guess any questions right now? Anything jumping out? Any clarity?
Let's keep going. We'll get through it.
Let's go through it.
Then we
Okay.
can ask some questions. Yeah.
Some future things, some changes. Looking at the WA with postseason tournaments, they have stuff scheduled right now. They have dates set. What it's going to look like, though, is a little bit different. They don't know for basketball, for example, like last year when they had to cancel midway through the girls' tournament and no boys' tournament. This year they have dates set. They don't have locations set. It might look a little different. Volleyball had separate locations for each division. They tried to keep it, safe in terms of how many spectators were allowed, how many teams are allowed at a time, and I can see the winter sports following a similar approach with that through the WIAA. That's something the WIA will, kind of let out as they go. They're going to see how the season goes to make sure that it is safe and effective and efficient to do that. If you were get eliminated from the season, you could add games there at the end if you choose to do so. And much like the fall, WA is strongly recommending, going across the border, playing in multi-team events. Looking at it, Minnesota is something that would be close to us here, but they have some situations going on with their restrictions also. So we would just be playing basically local teams to keep it as safe and travel as limited as possible. And something the WA did put out there is athletes can now participate in up to 2 events outside of the school competition while in season. So for the winter there, for like wrestling, looking at only having our 7 conference dual meets, which would mean only 7 matches for our wrestlers. That's what the WA laid out for us to be safe and to have proper time for tracing and whatnot. But if a outside group did happen to put on a tournament and rent a venue somewhere, our athletes could go compete in 2 of those and still fall under the WA guidelines. So that's kind of an extension there, understanding the situation that the WA is putting out there. The calendar for winter sports did get pushed back. Both the start dates got pushed back, and then the end dates got bumped up. So basically all the seasons are already shortened across the board. You look at our dance team, their regional and state competitions did get pushed back. Those are still up in the air in terms of the virtual approach that they're going to take. Our basketballs are all starting a week later and ending roughly 2 weeks sooner is the plan right now. The fall, the WA did have an alternative spring season, which will be played there in March into April. They're not having that for the winter season. It is laid out as they have it right now, and there's no plans to have an alternate season. There's just not enough months and weeks to really do that. We talked on this before, though. All the sports that we talked about so far, dance, basketball, and wrestling, are both high and moderate risk sports. Pierce County Public Health, they are not advising them, but the county does not plan to halt them or stop them or prevent them right now from occurring, as long as proper approaches and guidelines are followed and there's no outbreaks that they deem to be a threat that they need to step in with that. Talking about that here, basketball is deemed a moderate risk sport. Some changes there that we have right now are just some updates. Our first scheduled game would be a week from this past Tuesday, so November 24th would be a home girls game. We have Cochrane Fountain City planning to come to town. And we're limiting the games to 20 scheduled contests right now. It's just in terms of the time and trying to spread out the games, it's the best we can do, which is roughly 2 games a week, and there are 3 some weeks in terms of that, so that would look like there. Wrestling is a high-risk sport deemed by the criteria there. Their first scheduled match is December 8th, and that could get pushed around. Honestly, today we were working as a conference on our 8th wrestling schedule that we've been looking at. So it'd be somewhere in that time frame there. And it's only going to be matches with one other school. It's going to be 0 multi-team events that will be scheduled by us schools. Like I said, though, an outside event could occur that our wrestlers could attend as one of their 2 approved ones. But everything will be in the middle border right now, and it's 1 week mandatory in between their matches. So right now we're looking currently to wrestle on Thursdays is what it would look like. So probably December 3rd could be our first match, not the 8th. Like I said, that got changed this afternoon. Dance team, moderate to high risk there, depending on what type of dance it is. They're looking at mostly virtual competitions, and like I said, their regionals and their state did get pushed back later into the winter there for them. Forensics and National History Day are deemed low risk, and they're looking at virtual competitions across the board. And majority of their practices will also be virtual, so they should be able to operate in a safe, effective manner there. Just some general information there. Working with, myself with the activities director, Mr. Figge with principals, Dr. Spikuza with superintendents. We're in quite a bit of conversation with the other schools in the middle border, obviously, and surrounding areas, River Falls, Hudson. Majority of the middle border, which involves Pierce, Polk, and St. Croix counties, plan to sponsor all winter sports at this time. There are a couple schools right now that are on pause. They're not going to start practices until November 30th or December 7th. A lot of it has to do with their board and moving forward and how things are going for them as schools. Majority of those schools were all 100% on campus up until the last couple weeks when they saw cases skyrocketing both on their teams and within their schools. So that laid into some of their decision making there. There are some schools that are having their board meetings this week that they're doing exactly what we're doing here to kind of lay out what their future looks like for them here. With middle border, spectators, middle border wants to have a consistent blanket policy. It's kind of to be determined right now, but everyone seems to be leaning very strongly towards home parents only. So no visiting fans at events, no student sections. It would just be 2 parents at each event there. And if it's something that we don't feel having fans is necessary, we'd be open to closing the doors and just streaming for everybody if we need to keep it as safe as possible there with that wiggle room. But that's what we're looking at right now, just home parents in attendance there. The mask mandate from Governor Evers, the 21st, Saturday, that is set to expire. As a middle border conference, we're looking to have a consistent policy. If it is extended, the mandate, obviously everyone will be wearing masks no matter what. Playing, not playing, watching, you name it, across the board. If it's not extended, Then we need to look how we want to move forward in what we feel is our safest and best practice. We're getting a lot of different answers throughout the conference with what some schools are thinking in terms of principals, activities directors, boards across the board there. Some are, we got to wear masks at all times to even entertain having an event. Some conferences, the Big Rivers, the Dairyland, they are mandating masks for all competitors at all times, everyone. So, I think that's something to look at. Talking with our coaches, they're on board with anything. They just want to get the seasons in. If they didn't have to wear a mask, one coach I quote here said, he goes, "Gosh, I struggle just yelling with my mask on." He said, I imagine the kids having to run, that could be tough. But he said, if that's the way to keep us safe, we will do that. And everyone understands that, and we'll be on board. If that means we get to play games, yes, we will wear the masks. For example, Cochran Fulton City, they're coming to play girls basketball on 11/24. Their AD called me up and said their conference, the Dairyland, is mandating it. They wouldn't be able to play us unless we're going to wear masks also. And our coach said, we're going to wear masks. Let's play basketball. So like I said, they're open to doing that to make things possible and opportunities out there for everyone. Looking at our different levels, our middle school. Our boys basketball has been going on here. I know Mr. Matzik, you've been helping out. They had some hiccups, some close contacts from the classroom. We had to hit pause, not because of a team impact, originating with the team, but from coming from the classroom onto the team. We just didn't have enough numbers. But looking at cancellations, some other schools have had to cancel games on us due to COVID. And it's just, they're having close contacts and not having enough. But us internally on our teams, we've been seeing great things, doing what we need to do to keep things rolling there. We would like to continue as we go into wrestling and girls basketball, offer some sort of opportunity that is safe and realistic. And like I said, we're currently executing that with our boys basketball team. We're looking as we schedule to try to space out the games, to have at least one day, if not two, as a buffer if we do need to trace, if we play a team and someone were to have a situation that they test positive or showing symptoms, that we have time to trace and do that properly to keep people safe. Wrestling will be similar to the high school. It would just be dual meets against one other team, and we're looking to schedule those prior to our varsity matches. And we're working with our varsity coaches on best practices, approaches that we can do to stay safe. One thing is, looking at the middle school, with them being virtual now, that does eliminate some of the risk of the classroom contagion there. So it would be good for the kids to still get together on teams and understand the importance of that responsibility without the close contact risk that you could say in the classroom. PCR. Angela has been working diligently, much like the summer and fall, to make things possible. Looking at basketball here, she's following the middle school and the high school approach with everything that we're doing with the sanitizing, the disinfecting, the screeners. I just came from a fourth grade girls basketball practice here tonight before this. I screened everyone. They're wearing masks, they're running around, they're having fun, staying social distance. It's important for them, I feel. She wants to continue to do something for the younger kids and being safe, staying healthy and keeping that at the focus. One thing she's looking to do is schools are not opening up their gym to outside teams. The tournaments, as we know them, are a rarity. And so she's trying to look at ways to be creative to have things go on. And one thing that she's looking to do is hosting their multi-team events. They are staggered. It would be 2 teams in the gym at a time. The parents would bring their own lawn chairs. They'd have masks on, everyone. They would play. They would get done. They would leave. It'd be sanitized. The next 2 teams would come in, almost like a classroom. The bell rings, everyone leaves. When they're gone, the next group comes in. It's a clean environment, and they go from there. So she's looking to operate those just because there's some teams that don't have any tournaments. There's just nothing out there. So looking to put some sort of opportunities out there for our kids to be involved and have a meaningful experience there. Pierce County Public Health obviously plays a big part in everything that we do here in staying safe. Basically, we have a shared agreement that there's a lot of benefits for the extracurricular activities and students staying engaged. They endorse the benefits of everyone being involved in doing those things. They do understand, though, like I said, there's a lot of challenges going on right now when you're in a pandemic. Playing athletics, having extracurriculars, these different activities, it does involve a risk. It does expose some people, whether it's cross-county, whether it's school to school. Like I said, we got Polk and St. Croix. you name it. So they just want us to be aware of that, and they want people to understand that in the public that, there's risk reward involved with this. The reward is the benefits of being involved in the social emotional aspect and the physical aspect, but also the risk of, contamination there and putting people at risk in terms of their health with that. I kind of touched on the risk reward part here. Looking at, by putting on one game, Rick, if you want to go to the next.
Yeah.
By putting on an event, what, or is it, deemed necessary, or is it too big of a risk? And I think that's one thing that we're looking at, the greater good of everything, keeping people involved, or do we say, it's not worth the risk to do this? And, we're looking at our practices, our approaches, whether it's only one team staying within our conference, whether it's the contract tracing, the masks, the doing our part there with disinfecting, you name it, the social distancing, we feel we can do our part to stay safe. You look at the risk reward, that's something we lay out with that approach with coaches and our athletes to understand that. It's an assumed risk. One thing we put in our COVID agreement form that our parents and our athletes sign in the fall and now into the winter, it just looks at being involved in an extracurricular. There is a risk of added exposure there. And if that does happen, you're looking at the chance of being quarantined and that also impacting the immediate family. So households, if they fall, to COVID, they test positive, or someone in their household tests positive, they would be deemed a close contact. And by playing in sports and by being involved in extracurriculars, that is an extra risk. So they have to make sure that it's a known danger to be involved in extracurricular for that entire household. That if someone tests positive in their household, the entire household is looking at a 14-day quarantine. And that's something that public health just wants us to make sure we're clear with people about. I'm getting near the end here, I promise. No one's asleep yet, I don't think. Many factors to look at here as we kind of wrap up. The WOA guidelines, they put steps out there to help eliminate the risk and best practices to stay safe. And then us internally, our administration, our nurses, our coaches, we're focused on the safety. And I linked there our safe approaches, basic guidelines that I go through with our coaches that they understand, here's what we need to do. And in full transparency, it's 2 pages as you go through it. We could have a 40-page document with bullet point after bullet point in size 8 font that, it still wouldn't outline everything. What we're trying to do is make sure that we're diligent in everything that we do, and making sure we're seeing the big picture by also understanding the small disciplines and the details that go involved to keeping people safe. And our coaches have done a phenomenal job. Our athletes understanding what they need to do in order to play and to be safe. So I think that is important. Like I said, I met with all our head coaches here in the winter, much like in the fall, and laid everything out. They're confident, they're comfortable in leading their programs. They understand the situation that they're in. They understand pause or halt or pivot at any time. The plug could be pulled. They understand that. And the athletes do also, as they talk to me about that there is responsibility, there is accountability involved in being an extracurricular and being a part of a team, whether it's forensics, whether it's basketball, wrestling, you name it, across the board. People are got to be that team first mentality. And they got to make sure that they're doing the right things at all times, both on the practice field, in the classroom, in the community, you name it. And linked on here before was Dr. McGuine, the UW presentation that we alluded to this fall that talks about the positive impact of being involved in extracurriculars and the study that he did through, like I said, UW-Madison this past summer and fall. So basically what it boils down to here is looking for our options on a motion for moving forward and where we're at, what we want to do. Looking at this for high school, PCR, middle school, across the board, we feel confident that we can move forward collectively, and if we need to hit pause on things, we will. We understand that. If we need to delay, we will. But we are confident, we are comfortable with everyone involved that we can move forward and be safe and do this in a healthy manner while being nimble, while being flexible, and understanding the risk in what we're doing at hand to offer extracurriculars. So looking at it, I would say number 3 there would be the option that we kind of move forward with it in the fall there, and we have some, some subheadings along with that. But allowing Prescott School District Winter Athletics to move forward with some parameters there. Our parents and athletes acknowledgement of risk, which they sign off on and they understand. They hear in the code meeting, they hear from the coaches. Obviously, they're tuning into this, they're going to hear it here. Myself monitoring our coaches at all levels for compliance with our approaches and protocol. And the face covering things, like I said, whether the mandate expires or not, our coaches are comfortable with continuing that to help keep us safe. Social distancing is not possible in a lot of those sports, the high risk and the moderate risk, but they understand wearing the masks may help us stay safe. Like I said, some coaches understand it might not be ideal, and they kind of hotted it a little bit, but they know that wearing them, if it means we get to play, they're on board, and they'll make sure practices, games across the board, that happens. Spectators will be limited. Right now we're looking at 2 tickets for our families only for home events. We would not be able to go to away events. They would be streamed. We do everything in our power to make sure people can watch them. And then Dr. Spruza and I would be in contact weekly at a minimum on the health status of our coaches and participants. Just kind of where we're at, and is there need for pause, is there need for concern, and celebrating small victories as we go there. Option 2 would be, as the board directing us to hit pause on starting right now, or on current practices going on, current games going on, until we would find a metric that we're comfortable with, or a safe level that we feel confident we can move forward. And I think we would need to then define what our metric would look like, or what our points would be there for that trigger. And then lastly, their option 1 would be an abundance of caution, looking to cancel all competitions right now, community education, PCR, all school events across the board there.
All right. Well, let's open it up. I'm going to start with Steve online. Steve, do you have any questions for Matt, or any comments about any of this? You want to kick us off?
I don't think I have any questions. I mean, comments, it's difficult because obviously safety is paramount. I don't see anything in this presentation from Mr. Smith and the rest of the admin team indicating that hasn't been a significant consideration. So I feel good about that. The biggest thing for me is our students and the kids who want to participate, and allowing them the opportunity to do that until it becomes such that they can't from a safety standpoint. So I think from a district, allowing our athletics to continue, if the athletes and the parents understand the risks, they certainly have the option to opt out if for some reason they feel like they are not safe. But it certainly seems like our administrative team is working hard to make sure it's safe. One other concern I had, if no other teams are playing, who are you going to play? Well, it sounds like as a conference we've kind of got some of that alignment as well. So that's good to hear. And certainly something else Mr. Smith noted is that the athletes and the parents understand that the season could end at any time. And I think that's really important to have up front. So hopes to subdue some of the disappointment that could potentially happen. But I'm certainly in support of our students being able to participate as long as they're safe.
Thanks, Steve. Tanya, do you have any questions for Matt or comments?
Similar to Steve, I don't really have that many questions. I do see that it looks like our recommendation is to wear face coverings throughout the sports. And I guess the biggest thing that I would be looking for is, I read all the WIAA recommendations. They're not necessarily recommendations. They specifically say they're not best practices. They're just there for critical thinking and to have conversations. So I'd be really curious. It sounds like maybe that 2-pager is a little bit more specific about where we would fall on those things. And I would want to see that kind of stuff be really clear, so that there is, I guess, really no room for error, I guess. Like, we all have a really good understanding of what's expected. But I do have to say, like, comment-wise, is that this was actually a really hard thing for me to wrap my head around. As an educator, I value being in school. As somebody that plays sports and enjoys coaching, I understand the value of athletics and having kids participate. I reached out to the community and asked for some feedback, and I had a lot of awesome, between staff members and parents and athletes reach out to me and share kind of their perspective and opinion. And overwhelmingly, Matt, I had very similar responses as you, which is we would do anything to be able to play, just tell us and we'll do it, which made me feel a lot better. But I guess that one of the things that's really important for me with all of this is that I'm going to support this move and stuff, but it's really important that I guess my priority is out there, which is that school is my priority. Having kids in school, learning in school, having access to school is my number one priority. And so if at any point we have our athletics that gets in the way of kids being able to be in school, then to me that's a trigger that we can't continue with those sports. It impacts more than just the athletes when it comes to the quarantining and all those kind of close contacts and stuff like that. So if we want our kids to be in school, and if that's kind of our priority, which for me it is, I really feel like we need to prioritize and significantly limit all of the non-essential activities that we can. And so just knowing that we're not having all the extra stuff with sports, we're doing what we need to do, and we're having as few people out there, as few volunteer coaches, as few, whatever out there, so our athletes can play. And I've heard a lot of people today and other days talk about how you can choose to play sports, we can't choose to be in school, or that, it's an assumed risk that our athletes and families are taking on. But really, the reality for me is that if we have not learned anything else during this pandemic, I really hope that it's a learned understanding that what we choose for ourselves and for our families impacts our entire community right now. So if a family chooses to play sports and then they go to school, that choice and acceptance of that more risk is not just for that athlete, it's also the kid that they're sitting next to. And it's the kid on the bus, it's the kid in the classroom, it's all parts of that day. So our athletes have much more responsibility right now. If they choose to play a sport, there's a unique responsibility that they haven't had in the past. And there's an increased responsibility of our athletes, coaches, volunteers to really follow these guidelines and be safe so we can continue with these sports, so kids can continue to be in school. And I know we're not there right now, but that's absolutely, for me anyways, my goal is to get kids back in school learning. We have many kids that, just like sports is the number one thing in their lives, being in school and learning is the number one thing that motivates kids, that helps them get through all the emotional, mental health things that they need. And so being in school is super important. I like, Matt, that you've talked about being direct with coaches and upfront with coaches. I think that that's extremely important right now, is that our coaches and our volunteers, if we're talking about PCR and all that stuff, really have to understand this responsibility of how to keep our kids safe, how to prioritize. Like, we need kids to be back in school learning. And so in order to do that, the choices that they make on the field, the choices that they make on the way to the field impacts our kids' ability to be in school learning at the end of the day. And so there's a ton of responsibility with coaches, and I really hope that our coaches take that extra time, and I'm talking about volunteer coaches too, PCR, all of that. Really takes that time and thinks about whether or not this is something that they can get behind. Can they conduct practices and follow all these measures? Can they have competitions and follow all these measures? And if they can't, this isn't the year to coach, right? There's so much more responsibility out there. And so, Matt, I hope that you're having those conversations. I hope you're having those direct conversations. It sounds like you are. And I do feel like, if we can really prioritize students being in school, we can still work together and give our student athletes these opportunities to play sports. But it really only works with that understanding that we're in this together, that all of our choices impact our ability to be in a classroom as well as be on a field. And so, Matt, I trust you guys. I believe in sports. I believe that kids need this opportunity. But I am also really hesitant that if at any point this impacts our ability to open our schools back up or stay open, that's also a trigger for us to have a conversation about whether or not sports continues. So anyways, thank you. Those are my thoughts. I know this is a tough decision. I know that this is good for our community and good for our athletes in many, many ways. Just continuing to prioritize being in school and getting our kids in school is most important to me.
Thanks,
That's all I
Tanya.
had.
Thank you. Vicki?
Yeah, I've got some stuff. So you said that for the events that are away, you're gonna stream as much as possible, so parents will be able to see that, which is good. I guess my other concern with like parents at home events, at this point, we don't have any students in high school or middle school attending. Is it really a good idea to be bringing parents into a school that we don't even have students in right now and bring in that extra exposure possibility from outside? That kind of concerns me a little bit because, I mean, if you're gonna have parents, we need to have them maintain their distance from other parents. And sports is such a social event for parents and for kids that I guess I don't know how you monitor that when you're trying to keep track of kids on the court and you're trying to make sure parents are keeping their distance from each other. So that's my concern right now. We can stream this stuff from home events, so parents could watch. I guess if numbers come down a little bit and this winter gets a little bit better and we can get the kids back in school, maybe then we open up the events to parents, come back for the end of the season, closer to if we're gonna have tournaments or whatever you're gonna have. So that's my concern with parents
Okay.
coming in right now with the situation that our schools are in currently.
Okay.
And then, as far as the screenings, so that's like the temperatures, and are you doing that sort of thing with the student athletes before practices, that sort of stuff?
It's basically 5 questions. If they've been having a fever, full transparency, the thermometers that we've been using are hit or miss, and so
Yeah.
we've basically been telling kids at home to just take their own temperature, and it's, like we said, that trust and that honesty, they're having that discipline. It's basically shortness of breath, fever, cough, any exposure to anyone that they know have been in COVID. And we've had kids that have been honest that said, you know what, I did have a little bit of a cough,
Okay.
and so they've been sent home, and then it's a 72-hour hold before they
Okay.
can come back being symptom-free.
Okay, so the kids are,
And it has came in, when we had to do close contact tracing, having who's at practice and whatnot, much like an attendance roster and seating chart for school,
okay.
has been vital.
So yeah, so then that kind of leads into another thing here with the trying to maintain a certain amount of time between competitions. So you had talked about, I think it was for the middle school stuff, where you're trying to get at least 2 days, where, we know that 3 to 5 days
Yeah.
is the possible exposure. So that to me doesn't seem like that's enough time.
Okay.
Um,
So looking for 3 to 5 in terms of between games?
Yeah, the scheduling, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
And it's, full transparency, our schedules are, they're adjustable. With any, if need be, we can do that to
Okay.
make it happen.
Because, that right there is a known situation, that 3 to 5 days. So anything closer, 2 days just doesn't seem like that's enough to where we could just have exponential exposures, possibly.
And the high school schedule, for basketball mostly, there are some situations that they're out playing like on a Tuesday and then on a Thursday,
Mhm.
just the way gym availability, other schools. And
Right.
so there is some of that. We can attempt to navigate that. The hard part would be, it might mean having to cancel a game just because we can't find another, 3-day
Space.
window in there that
Yeah.
we don't have a gym, they don't have a gym, they have another game.
Yeah.
With the schedules being shortened already, it does get, it's difficult to navigate some of that.
Yeah.
But if the board feels, that's something that's vital and a non-negotiable, we'll make it happen. We would get rid of our non-conference games and play a conference-only schedule and adjust it accordingly.
Okay, and then the ability to go to outside events just doesn't even seem I guess I don't know why they have said that, yep, you can go ahead and do that as an athletics, because they want you to limit travel.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to maintain time between when the kids are having meets or competitions, so. And around here, Minnesota's shut down.
Mhm.
So I guess I see that they've given us that as an option for athletics, but at the state we're in right now, I just don't think it's something our student athletes should even pursue.
Yeah, so we would plan to stay in state, and like I said, the middle border right now is not looking to allow any visiting fans, so it would be all streamed and watching, and our events would be conference only or mostly local, like Hudson and River Falls, are on our schedules later in the year to chance to play them, and if it's here, it would just be our home fans, and if it was up at Hudson or River Falls, it would just be their home fans.
Okay.
So, trying to limit exposure across that border.
Yeah, because I don't want to see people traveling so that their kids can go do something, and then they've traveled distances and other people have come, and now you've got all these different people coming from all over the place because they're not letting them do it in Minnesota. So how far from Minnesota are they coming because somewhere in Wisconsin they can have a tournament,
Yeah.
and now you've just got this
It blows up.
environment that, yeah, nothing good can come out of. So yeah, those are just some of the things that I'm kind of concerned about. The one winter sport that does really, I guess, concern me going forward is wrestling. And, the professional sports and college sports, they're screening all these athletes. And the antigen testing is not like 100%. It's kind of hit or miss, but at least they're getting screened, where high school athletes aren't. So I feel the masks definitely should be worn, and should be worn all the time. I mean, if everybody is wearing them, then everybody's on the same page.
It's a non-issue. And
Exactly.
Our coach today, I talked with him actually this afternoon about it. He had a wrestler in the room with him, and we talked just about that. Having our mask and staying safe there, and with the understanding that the risk involved, and there could be positive and close contact, and their understanding of that. So they get that, and I guess one thing is, looking, like I said, the middle border across the board, there's some schools that if the mandate is not extended for masks, I don't see them wearing them. And so I don't know if that's something we want to look at, that if said school is choosing not to wear the mask, if we are going to mandate it here as a school district, do we mandate it if they're going to come into Prescott, or do we choose not to play them? I guess, kind of looking for whether you want me to make the decision, whether that's something as a board we feel we need to. Yep.
We'll talk about it here.
Okay.
I want to weigh into.
And there's an example, Amory. Do you want to just explain? They're in middle border, and
Amory's on a hold right now. They're looking to hopefully start up their winter seasons with practices on November 30th, to be determined in that instance. So we're moving some stuff around with them, and in conversations with the rest of the middle border on masks mandates, because I threw out there, even if it does end, the governor does not extend it, do we as a conference want to have a blanket policy with masks? And lukewarm reaction from some schools. Others, nope, they don't want the competitors to be wearing them. And Amory said if we do not mandate it, it basically gives them I'm going to quote, a negative 700% chance of getting back to business. So Amory's basically saying if people aren't wearing masks, they're going to really struggle to get the ball rolling with Amory School District.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other schools that they hope that they don't have to, I guess you could say.
Well, I mean, you guys, you've made the decision already. A visiting team that's coming wears masks. We've made that decision. That's what we're doing. Like I said, at the state that everybody is in right now, I think you wear the masks and everybody is equal on the playing field. And then that's one of those barriers then that we know we've put up. So like Tanya has said, the whole goal is to have kids in school and doing these activities. Right now, they're not in school. So, anyway, okay.
Thanks,
I'm done.
Vicki. Pat?
Yeah, we've gotten all over the place here. I got a couple questions. So right now, we are a virtual learning environment in both of our school, in our high school. Is that, and it's currently due to a staff restriction, is that correct? Okay. And for me, that's an important distinction right now. It is due
For
to a
the high
staffing
school, I mean,
restriction right now as to why we are
Yeah,
virtual.
It is.
Okay.
We have rising student.
Well, wait, to be clear though, my understanding was middle school was not,
Yeah, we have,
Just-
so we have two levels, and the answer is yes to both. So at the middle school, we had a preponderance of our students are no longer in the classroom, and it was becoming an untenable position to work with 100 students on site and over 200 students at home. Some of it was due to close contacts, but we are seeing a little bit more increase, obviously, with burden rates going up and more testing, we're seeing more cases. At the high school, we were dealing with more, at this point, it was kind of a both and, but I think it leaned more to our inability to fully staff. We were short on custodians, we're short on food service, and we had just kind of some ill-timed concurrent issues with the different teachers. Our goal was a K-12 view, and we know that it is more challenging anytime we disrupt the schedules, but we know that it's even more challenging if we disrupt K-5. And so to be able to marshal additional subs, which is limited, to make sure that we had aides, we needed to make that move. And I think if we have to make another move, to be honest with all of you and the community, the next school, if we have to go virtual, would be the high school. Mainly, again, older students, they're able to handle the technology, and much better than the K-5.
Sure. Thank you. So,
Speak into the microphone, Pat.
sorry. So I wanted to understand that there's been, I think, some, I don't know, misinformation, that's probably not fair, but some question as to why we've been virtual and what might cause that. I'm not gonna repeat everything that everybody already said. I'm in favor of starting athletics and activities. I think it's important for all the reasons that I think everybody has laid out. I do recognize the risk, and I do want to be respectful, of our teaching staff and administration here as well. I really think it's important to find a path to allow this to happen, to keep all the safety protocols in place, and allow people, I think, to follow that and be successful. And if we're not able to, then we're not able to. I also want to be a little bit careful on, I don't want to use the wrong word here yet, but blaming athletics if a school gets shut down. I mean, there's lots of other reasons. There's people at work. There's kids hanging out outside of work that this can get brought into a school. I mean, so I want to be a little bit careful about, hey, school is the number one most important thing that we're going to do, and I understand that. I don't know that it's fair to say that athletics and school can't, coexist if work and hanging out with friends and all the other stuff is also in place. That's a little bit unfair to me. Matt, I just got a couple. I can't offer any more than what you've already laid out. I think it would be important to eventually understand if we're going to mandate masks here, but we go to, say, St. Croix Central, and they don't want us wearing masks, what's our position on that? I can't offer you any more there, but obviously a couple of items that need to get cleaned up. I guess I don't have anything else right now.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. I'm just going to try to tie all this up. So there's a lot of good dialogue here from the board. It sounds like we're all on the same page as far as at least trying to start seasons and get them off the ground. From a board level, what I want to try to do is, you know, if let's try to sum it up as either we want to move forward with sports or we don't. And if we want to move forward, I think that's great. My personal opinion is I believe that our administrators have put a ton of thought and effort and communication with other schools and the health departments, and constantly in contact, dealing with COVID just for the district, dealing with the protocols with the Middle Border Conferences. Matt, I know you've been on the phone talking to all kinds of athletic directors and coaches. I truly believe that you're looking out for the best interest of the students and of the school district itself, with the number one priority being safety and health and safety, and keeping the doors open whenever possible. I do believe athletics can be decoupled from that conversation as well. We can do both. I do believe we can do athletics and keep the doors open. And I think we owe it to our students that participate in athletics. It sounds like a quarter of the kids participate in athletics. That's a big chunk. So what I would say is, from a board level, rather than getting into the weeds as far as like what we want to enforce, and Vicki bringing up some great points with, you know, parents at games, maybe spreading out the schedule a little bit more. I would recommend, in my opinion, maybe we kind of keep it at a high level from a board perspective and come up with a motion that supports the move forward with sports, and then put it back on our athletic director and our superintendent to come up with, and the administration to come up with, you know, how that looks. And you've had a great presentation tonight. I think it's very thorough, very thought out. 25 minutes, and it was very well done. So I know you guys are putting in a lot of effort here. So those are my 2 cents. If there's any other comments from the board, we can certainly continue the dialogue here if anybody wants to chime in with more thoughts.
Before you make a motion, I would like at least a clarification. Some schools in our middle border have decided if a school is in a state of virtual instruction, their athletics will then hit pause. Other districts have decided that they've decoupled the instructional model from athletics. I think Matt and I are willing to follow the will of the board on that. I think that given that we currently are in virtual, if you were leaning toward moving forward with winter sports, I think then the athletic participation, the club, that is their cohort. And so the risk of bringing the contagion back into the school when it's virtual is kind of non-existent. And so if you are going to move forward with the winter athletics, I would ask that we don't couple it with the instructional model that we're in. Obviously, there's enough triggers and oversight that we would have to make a decision anyway in the best interest. And then the other big ask I would have is that regardless, we all know that the current mask mandate does sunset on November 21st. It's currently in front of the Supreme Court. Rumor today was that Governor Evers will extend that. My guess is it'll also go to the Supreme Court. That just creates a chaotic situation. I already know some middle border districts do not want masks. We also know that a team like Amory will not be able to participate unless masks are worn. We know one thing scientifically is that masks are a protective step both for an individual now and also for others in the room. I would recommend that we adopt that regardless of what happens either in the Supreme Court or with regards to when it sunsets, unless the case rates drop dramatically, that our athletes, and according to the coaches and the athletes we've spoken with, is that we would require face coverings in all events.
And Rick, this is Tanya. It's my understanding that Amory has kind of done that, and they have said, and Pat, this kind of answers, I think, your question, which is that if they are in a competition and the school they are competing against with does not choose to wear a mask, then Amory is saying they're not going to play that competition. Is that correct?
That's exactly what Amory is at this time. I think for us, if we went to an area that wasn't mandating masks, again, this is assuming that that were to fall away as a restriction statewide, another team can make that choice, but I would think it would be in our best interest to still have our athletes using face coverings. And also requesting that our competition did as well. But that would be an extension of it. I think first and foremost, our responsibility is to our families and to our students, and I would like to encourage us to include that if we move forward.
Are you encouraging us to make a motion to include a mask mandate from a board level?
Yes.
Does anybody have any thoughts or concerns with that? I'm not going to go around, but if you're, Steve or Tanya, if anybody just want to jump in on that, do you have any concerns with that?
I have no concerns. I've read a ton about it, and I can't see how that is a concern. It's not a health risk for students. I get it's uncomfortable. I would probably hate it, but in order to play, I have no concern with requiring that we wear a mask at all time.
Neither do I.
Okay. Well, here we are. So we have, there's on the item 5 in the business agenda, there is a motion here that we could use, and a follow-up motion for the instructional model if we go 100% virtual to approve it in that environment as well. So if we want to
Just a
use,
point of clarity, Mike, if we were going to play another school and they chose not to wear masks, are we okay as long as we mask up playing them? Or I have a feeling this, if not extended, this situation may occur within our conference.
Yeah, I'm actually not opposed to what Amory's saying. If somebody doesn't want to wear a mask, then they don't have to play us. I mean, I'm fine with that stance, and I understand that that's going extreme, but I'm guessing most people aren't going to pull out of those competitions.
yeah, I Pat, you're pretty quiet, but I'm going to jump in here. If we're going to do it, if we're going to mandate a mask in Prescott, then we should mandate the teams that we play should have masks as well. Either we're all in or we're all out, I think. And that's because I think there's a disadvantage to Prescott if we're playing with masks on and other teams aren't. I think it's not from a competitive perspective, but just it sets a bad precedence, and I think it would, the optics of it they don't look good to me. And so Pat,
Mike, I agree that if they come here, they got to wear masks. I think a bigger question is if we go there and they aren't wearing masks, what are we going to do? What are we still going to wear our masks?
Yeah.
Is a bigger question. I think Tanya, and I don't want to speak for you, but just so you're clear, I think you're saying that you're saying not only that, but you would potentially be in favor of not even playing in that contest if they were unwilling to.
That's what Amory's doing right now, and I'm not opposed to that at all. But I'm really not opposed. I mean, like, who cares if they're not wearing a mask and we go there? Our kids can still wear a mask.
I get it and I respect that position. I'd be more on the lines of, I think our kids wear masks whether they do or they don't if we visit. I do potentially see a disadvantage from a competitive advantage or a competitive standpoint. That's just me. I know it's not all about, wins and losses. Safety comes first. That is going to be a hang up for people. I know it is, but my stance is if that gets us a path to, allowing this to happen, then I would be for that.
For allowing us to play a game against a team without masks
at their
venue.
So how many games are home games versus away?
Yeah.
Like, why? I mean, if we're worried about wearing a mask if we're worried about, like, we're no longer cohorting when we start to be in a competition, right? We're playing another team. These are contact indoor sports. So if we only have a couple home games, what's the point in requiring our kids to wear a mask?
Right
I mean,
now-
I'm just putting that out there, you guys.
For basketball, roughly 20 games are scheduled for each team. About half of them are home games. So
Yeah.
be 10 each for boys and girls. Wrestling, 7 duels. So basically, we will have 3 home matches. And I can lay out for visiting teams that we are mandating masks for our athletes. And if they're visiting here, if they, in Prescott, they wear masks. At their venue, we'll wear our masks. It's kind of we're on their turf, I guess you could say. It's kind of their call. We could recommend it, but kind of their school, their rules, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can still have our kids wear masks.
Yes, yep. If we mandate that, then our coaches will make sure that our athletes are in compliance for us to participate.
I'm good with that too, that path.
You good with that? All right. I think we talked this through. Does anybody else have any questions about that? Otherwise, we can try to get a motion and move on here. Somebody want to try to make a motion?
Steve's probably best at this, but I'll take a shot. I move to allow the Prescott High School students to participate in middle border conference athletics, PCR, and community ed athletic events this winter, so long as 100% face mask policy is in effect.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, and just a point of clarification, because the amendment, so long as face mask policy is 100% in effect, that is just for Prescott.
I guess we could add for Prescott home games, and that our players, coaches, and staff would abide by same policy when visiting other venues.
And can I ask another point of clarification? Are we including PCR with this as well? I mean, we are, right? Like wearing masks and all that stuff, community ed, all of that?
I would say if we're going to do it, we make it a
Yeah,
blanket.
it's
I believe so.
already part of the
Middle
motion,
school,
yep.
yeah.
Perfect.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I mean, point of order, there hasn't been an amendment, but can we get clarity on what the motion is at this point?
Can we redo it? Pat,
Yeah,
go ahead and redo
yep.
it.
I move to
Sorry,
allow
Pat.
the Prescott High School students to participate in middle border conference athletics, PCR, and community ed athletic events this winter, so long as 100% face mask policy is abided by all at-home games and by our students and staff at away venues.
I'll second.
Steve, you're way better at this than Pat is.
That did great, absolutely
That
fantastic.
was great. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that carries. We have one more motion to make here. Pat, you might as well take that one too, unless you don't have it up.
No, we're talking about 100% virtual.
Yeah,
I would not make this motion.
I will move to approve participation may continue if our instructional model is 100% virtual.
So I got a question about this.
can we get a second first? Anybody want to second that? I'll second it. So we have a motion second, let's talk about it. Pat, you have some questions?
I want to make sure that this motion is not tethering our activities in athletics to be tied to the virtual or non-virtual educational model. I guess maybe I'm nuts, it's been a long day, but if I read this the wrong way, it could seem that we would only play or not play unless we were 100% virtual.
No.
Okay.
Nope, it's participation may continue if we are 100% virtual.
Okay, what if we're not 100% virtual? Do we need to clarify that at all?
I don't think so. Because
Okay.
Yeah, I think it always goes down to the intent. The intent was, given that some of the other districts are going, that it, making the decision if they're virtual or hybrid, that they may or may
If
not.
we're cool with intent, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Anybody else have any questions on that? Anybody like a roll call, or we got a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I guess that carries. All right, we're good. Thanks, everyone.
Good question, Pat. Good question.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Steve.
Good job, good discussion, excellent presentation, Matt. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Information discussion. Number 1, school perception survey.
Yes, I have an introduction. We have Sue Peterson in the wings that's going to be presenting information from our fall 2020 survey that described 2 pathways and the infrastructure costs for the Prescott Public Schools. But I want to make sure that we understand how did we get here. And so the board and myself, last winter, we engaged in some work sessions, and we were challenged with the question is, where do we want to see our district in 5 years? And I was recently reminded by one of our Malone Elementary teachers who's working on her administrative license that each year at the kickoff, I usually challenge our staff to remind them that it's okay to be where you are, but it's not okay for us to stay there if we intend to remain competitive and relevant. And part of our goal is always to build and to foster future leaders within our community. At a board and a superintendent level, we have a shared obligation to have a master plan and vision for our district. And this journey was something that we kind of talked about with regards to establishing a mission and vision for our district. And as you recall, it was about this time where we had 3 specific meetings to kind of unveil the different stakeholders that participated with us, and we endorsed a new mission, vision, and values with for our district. One of the biggest differences was that our mission statement was over nearly 20 years, or almost approaching 30 years old. It did not have the word learning in it, and so one of the things that we really were striving toward was that we were focused on lifelong learners, and we were looking at both our students but also the adults within the organization. We also wanted to make sure that we had metrics around that, and so the symbols that you see on the screen representing our mission were to identify kind of our vision cards and being able to report out our performance. In addition, we wanted to make sure that we were engaging our different stakeholders, from our students to our greater community. Tonight will be another example of trying to capture the story that we're telling within the Prescott Public Schools, the performance that we're attaining, and being able to hear the voices of our community. In addition, that our mission is what we do each and every day. Our vision is our utopia. That's what we're attempting to achieve, and we want to be able to deliver both meaningful and creative opportunities so that that ongoing learning does occur. We adopted our 5 R's, and you see that represented within many of our buildings, and so those are the values that we hold and the shared values that we want to make sure that we are the best instance of ourselves each and every day. The school board also identified 5 points in a strategic direction. We were looking at understanding that the first 3, or 60% of the board's strategic direction, was organized around the learning experience of our students. We wanted to make sure that there were integrated educational opportunities, and we wanted to make sure that it benefited and was supporting all students within our organization. We wanted to make sure that the types of programs we were providing, from the high school redesign with regards to the courses, the trimester shift to give more opportunity and choices for our students, the STEM programs that we have initiated at our K-5 buildings and also at the middle school. And the idea was that we are looking at high quality instruction. We do educator effectiveness, site visits, and reporting and working with our teachers in every facet. You also have invested within the school calendar up to 10 to 11 professional development days so that we ensure that the professional growth occurs within our district. That's been something that we have doubled over the last 5 years. We continue to invest in our teachers and give them opportunities not only internally to learn from the best and to share great characteristics, but also to participate in professional development activities outside. But in order to achieve those learning experiences, we also understand that we have two very specific responsibilities as a board. And that is, as you develop a master plan and a vision for the district, you have made extraordinary strides with regards to the foundation on a fiscally responsible investment in our learning environments. Over the last 8 months, you've been able to retire previous bonds early. You just recently refinanced the outstanding bonds for the high school and saved our taxpayers over $1 million. And over the last 4 years, we've had a stepwise decrease in our mill rate. These have been achieved, these incredible financial investments and savings for our community have been achieved while adding and running a fourth building, updating our teacher professional pay to be market competitive. Secondly, we've also started to examine the safety and respectful learning environments so that all students are able to learn in a safe environment where they feel nurtured and can both bloom and flourish. We've worked with SDS architects who did a walkthrough and provided us with the infrastructure that examined the work that Mike Hoika has been doing in providing you a 10-year facility plan that looks at both our facilities and grounds. It aligns with our mission, vision, and values, and our goal is to make sure that we adopt processes each year to make sure that we are able to bloom and flourish within PSD. Internally, SDS also engaged with our administration and our teachers to examine the learning environments. We're examining the desired daily experience to make sure that the environment matches our 21st century academic model with our learning spaces. In addition, we looked at addressing the safe entranceways. Later tonight, you will hear about the ALICE training and the safety requirements that we have from the Department of Justice twice a year for safety, and the walkthroughs with regards to our Prescott police. We wanted to ensure that Malone Elementary and the intermediate had safe, secure, and controlled door entranceways that represented and were similar to the Prescott High School design. In order to deliver on 21st century programming, we know that we have to have highly qualified staff. We also know that to be able to elevate our student performance, we have to look at the type of programming, the resources, and the investments in the learning for our staff. And I think we've done and made great strides in those areas. The last two are kind of in larger font intentionally, because one of the things that we're looking at is, are we providing the learning spaces that align with 21st century programming that is flexible and aligned to our academic model? From the STEM programming, the interdisciplinary, working with CTE, our business, and our school store, there are many cross-disciplinary opportunities that we are providing for our students, and we want to make sure that the learning environments for buildings that were built in 1920, 1963, and 1969, 1970 are aligned to the way that we currently provide education. The challenge is that we share this $1. And if I was more artistic, I would have added 2 more hands, one on the north and one on the south, or 12 and 6, because we're always competing with finite resources. We only have $1, but many requests. As we do our budget, we always balance that on the values that we have and also the priorities that the board has worked on setting as late as April of 2020. We have the personnel, salaries, and benefits, and we are a personnel-heavy organization and industry. We have facilities that require ongoing maintenance and investments, and we also have identified that we want to continue to invest to make organizational and process improvements within our district. In April of 2020, you all met in a couple work sessions over the 2 months, and we came up with priorities that you had put in place. And that was first and foremost that we were going to retain and operate all 4 facilities. So we have Malone Elementary, our intermediate, the middle school, and Prescott High School. Another priority was to ensure that we had safe buildings and that there were secure entranceways at Malone and MIS. And we also were discussing whether or not to explore moving grade 3 back to the Malone Elementary to align with our new curriculum and our literacy development, making sure that students had a good grounding with regards to a continuation of our early literacy from 4K through 3rd grade, all in one, without a lot of transitions. We also wanted to address some capacity and programming issues at the middle school and identify and consider the best placement of grades across the 4 facilities. We have the luxury of space, and we're trying to make sure that we are able to use that space in the most efficient and a goodness of fit. This chart shows the different phases. The first phase was presented in August of 2019. And that was to look at the infrastructure for our K2 building, Malone, which is in red, MIS, our grade 3 through 5, the previous high school, and then Prescott Middle School, which is 6-8. Phase 2, again, was to kind of look at the efficiency and the organization of our grade levels. We were presented with 5 different options. The board, in reviewing these, was able to kind of winnow those down to 2 options. You can see that we had identified the financial impact. We also had some teachers and administrators weigh in on those options. On that T-chart, one of the challenges we had, and it goes back to our mission of trying to make sure that we have and develop lifelong learners, but it's through the engagement of our community. Obviously, the context of COVID-19 has limited our ability at this point to have focus groups and meetings with our community to tell our story and to be able to share some of the necessities that we have in place with regards to phase 1. What I wanted to make sure is that the infrastructure costs are in kind with regards to the 10-year facility plan that Mike Koika has presented to you. It was audited by SDS. That was, we are coming up on the end of year 2, and we are about to enter years 3 and 4. As you can see, the cost estimates for things like the roof at MIS, we know that the track needs to be resurfaced this spring. At the Malone Intermediate School, we also, just with the new tiles, if you walk through, you can already see the water marks from the current, it's past its lifetime, the roof is, and it's still leaking. We can patch it, but at some point, sooner or later, after its life expectancy, we do have to change. The boilers at the intermediate school and some tuck pointing are essential for us to ensure that the investment from early 2000s through 2005 aren't damaged by infiltration of water. As you can see, over the next couple of years, we are likely to need $10 million to meet the infrastructure costs for our district. It's one of the reasons that we reached out, specifically given that COVID is in place and unable to kind of get out to the community. We did want to have school perceptions reach out through a community survey. They have the expertise that was allowed, and we had the board members, I think we worked up to over 25 different versions of the survey. You commissioned school perceptions to make it community-wide. We wanted to make sure that we were able to inform, educate, and explore the willingness of our community to financially invest in our shared work of our mission, vision, and values. It is my pleasure to have Sue Peterson from School Perceptions, who is here tonight to share the findings of our fall survey. And so with that, I'll have Sue and Kyle Flaherty in the background and the magic shift us to a Zoom presentation and give us the opportunity for Sue to share the feedback from our community with regards to that survey.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you come in just fine.
Perfect, and you can see my screen.
I'm gonna
Not quite yet. Looks like it's coming.
We can see it from home.
Okay, it looks like I'm waiting for, there we go. Look at that, the magic of technology. All right, good evening. Well, as Rick said, my homework for tonight is to go through the results of that community survey. I need to be able to advance my screen. All right, so just a reminder who we are. We've been doing this work since 2002. We do the work all over the country, and our goal really is to help educational leaders like yourselves to gather, organize, and use data to make strategic decisions. Your survey, as Rick said, was conducted in October of this year. All residents within your district received that 8-page paper survey. The goal of that survey was twofold. One was to educate and let people know about the needs of the district. The second was really to gather that feedback on what your residents thought. Our survey has that one-time use access code and our proprietary website, so that ensures data integrity. Folks could take the survey once and only once. You had 802 people respond to the survey. Of those, 158 mailed that survey back to us pen and paper, and we've got a team of individuals, and their job is to simply enter those surveys into our software. So you had a participation rate of 21%. So right now you're saying, oh, 802 responses, 21%, and I would say that's excellent. Right now with COVID, we've seen a little higher response rate than normal. Used to be around 18 to 20%. Now we're seeing that 20 to 22% response rate. We also know that once 400 surveys get into the queue, really the data doesn't wiggle a whole lot. So more is always better, and sitting at 802, absolutely excellent. We ask folks who take the survey to tell us a bit about themselves. Why is that? We want to make sure all subsets of your community are represented. We also want to look at this data and analyze it and see how it correlates with voting habits. And I'll talk a lot about that, because our ability to do that within our software is really what will be able to, for us to tell you with a high degree of predictability where your community is at and what would potentially be successful should you choose to go out to referendum. So the first question we asked folks was to tell us their age. Again, we want to kind of correlate this with your community and with the voting habits of people. So we're comfortable with this. We know that 18 to 25-year-old age group, we typically see that below 3%. Those folks in that 35 to 54-year-old age group, parents of school-aged children, many of your employees fall in that age group. So those look good. We asked folks to tell us if they live within your school district. So 90% of the folks who responded to the survey live in the district. You're saying, well, who would that other 10% be? We allowed all employees to take the survey, as well as all parents that have kids attending school in your district. You likely have people that work for you that don't live within the Prescott School District. Similarly, you'll have boundaried in or non-primary custody parents who had an opportunity to respond. And that's okay. Remember, we wanted people educated as well as providing feedback. Those folks that don't live in the district, we will remove. So you will hear me talk about resident respondents when I look at tax tolerance and project support. We asked folks to tell us which municipality it is that they reside in. Half the folks who responded to the survey live within the city of Prescott. Another quarter were in the town of Oak Grove. And then you can see those other percentages there, with that 10% of folks again reporting, I don't live within the district. 146 school district employees, or 19% of everyone who responded to the survey, worked for the school district. 61% of the folks who responded reported that they had children attending school within the Prescott School District. Then we asked folks, well, if you've got school-age kiddos, Tell us what school or schools do they attend. Again, this allows you the opportunity post-survey. Rick's got access to our portal. If you wanted to pull that data apart and just look at parents that have kids in the middle school or parents that just have kids in your elementary school, you would have the ability to do that. Similarly, we wanted to see if folks could kind of make that connection to the school district. So we asked about what other relationships respondents had to the district. 25% said, I've already had kiddos that have graduated from the district. 22% graduated themselves from your school district. 15% reported they've still got kids at home that haven't yet attended school in your district. 13% were grandparents or relatives, and 9% said that they have some opportunity to volunteer in your schools. We asked one question regarding communication. This is important should you choose to go to referendum or not. We want to make sure that people know about the day-to-day happenings of what's going on in your schools. So this is the first time you'll see I start to pull that data apart. So we removed school district employees, and now we're simply looking at parents and your general citizens. Your parents are saying, best way to reach me, use technology. I like email, I'll go to your websites, Facebook, but I do also appreciate receiving mailings from the district. Your general citizens, they like the paper, so school district mailings, and they're looking to print. So that Pierce County Journal, as well as the Cardinal Connection, are the primary ways that your general citizens are going to find out about what's happening in the district. Then we had a section we called Achieving Excellence. I like to refer to this as the pulse of the people. What is it that people think about how the school district is doing? So what you're going to see here are 3 columns. So it's 3 mutually exclusive groups. We said you're either a staff member, a parent, or a general citizen, a group we call your non-parent, non-staff. They don't work for you. They don't have kids attending school in the district. If you happen to be a staff member who also is a parent in the district, your data only falls into one place. So I'm a staff member first, that's where my data shows up. I'm a parent second. The numbers you're seeing are simple averages. If everyone said great, you'd see a 4. If everyone had said poor, you would see a 1. So then we've rank ordered this according to that general citizen group, that non-parent, non-staff. So as you can see, what did your general citizens rank highest? Providing a safe and welcoming learning environment. So those 2, your parents and your school district employees both also ranked those as highest. Next, your citizens are saying you're doing a nice job of fostering meaningful student creativity and innovation, and that rigorous and relevant curriculum. So where do we start to go, okay, which things do we need to celebrate? Which things do we need to be concerned about? The closer the number, leaning towards that 3, that great to good, those are things we celebrate. Anything that falls below a 2.5, we say, oh, those are areas we just want to pause and go, okay, let's just kind of take a little peek. So we can see here that hiring and retaining of high quality faculty and staff falls just below that 2.5, as well as making decisions that align to our district mission. So sometimes this doesn't mean you're not doing it, but it just means you want to make those connections. So Rick did a good job tonight really looking at here's who we are and here's why we're doing the work that we're doing. We included 3 questions that you had previously asked on surveys, so you'll have some longitudinal data there. Again, we're looking at those 3 mutually exclusive groups and simple averages. If everyone had said strongly agree, you'd see a 5. If they said strongly disagree, you would see a 1. So we celebrate things, in this case, above a 3, and really now the closer that number is to a 2, the more we're concerned. We don't see any real close there. But you can see really strong response from people as far as the fact that they believe the district is doing a nice job of preparing children academically, really across all 3 groups. We asked one question regarding overall satisfaction. Overall, how satisfied are you with the school district? As you can see here, 73% of the respondents were either very satisfied or satisfied with the work of the district. 17% had some level of dissatisfaction. 10% reported no opinion. Typically that benchmark that we say we want to stay below as far as that dissatisfaction is 15%. So you're really just on that bubble there. Nothing I would say to be too concerned about, but just know that we ask this question and really look at those other pieces because we know that there's a correlation between people's likelihood of supporting a referendum, their willingness to open that wallet, and the thoughts they have as far as the work of the school district. Remember I said the survey had two purposes. One was to educate, the other was to gather data. So we provided some background to your citizens, let them know that you were working with SDS Architects and an engineering firm, that they'd been in your buildings and really identified some needs of the district, that those needs kind of were in themes of safety and security, some aging building infrastructure, making some improvements to your educational spaces, and then really looking critically at how were we using those spaces and were there opportunities to improve efficiencies. Based on this information, not providing any costs, but again, just getting a sense of where people were at, we said that the primary way to obtain funding to address those needs was through a referendum, and would your citizens be okay about the district exploring that? So now I'm going to have you look at this, and you're going to see that that blue bar represents all resident respondents. So as we asked that question, 42% of the respondents said, yep, it does make sense to explore a referendum. Nearly the same amount with 40% said, nope, I don't think so, with 18% undecided. Now, this is the first time you're going to see that I've pulled that all resident respondent data apart into three mutually exclusive groups. That's staff, parents, and then those general citizens again, the non-parent, non-staff. Why do we do that? Because if we just look at the blue bar, that doesn't correlate with what happens in an election or what happens at the polls. Why? Because the all resident respondents is overrepresented of school district employees and parents of school-aged kids. So what I mean by that is that if I was sitting outside of a polling place at a typical school district election, and as people left the polls, I said to them, excuse me, are you a school district employee? What I would find out is about 1% of the people that go to the polls work for the school district. Then if I ask the question, are you a parent of a child attending school in the Prescott School District? What I would find out is about 25% of the people that go to the polls would answer yes to that question, that they're a parent of school-age kids, which means that 75% of the people that go to the polls at a typical school district election don't fit into either of those categories. They're your general citizens, your non-parent, non-staff. Therefore, when you look at the data, we really can't look at the blue bar, but rather we need to focus our attention on the purple bar and the green bar. In fact, the purple bar gets that 75% weighting. The green bar gets that 25% weighting. Therefore, as we look at this, as far as that initial response to this question, you can see that there's a stronger leaning towards folks saying, no, they're not interested in the district exploring a facility referendum at this time, with 62% of your general citizens there. And now you can see more support as far as yes from the 25% group, with the 47% of parents saying yes, 34% no. So what happens with those folks that are undecided? Our research has shown us over the years, again, we've been doing this for nearly 20 years, a third of those folks will move to yes, and 2/3 of undecideds will stay no. They're just too nice right now to tell us no right away. So this was kind of a pause for us as we first started looking at your data. We thought, oh, we've got some work to do before we really introduce the projects or the costs. So now we really talked about that long-range plan. We really have those two pathways that we've identified. Both we're gonna keep 4 buildings in play. Both we're gonna move those 3rd grade students into the elementary school. But in one of the options, you were gonna continue to operate all 4 schools. And we identified what work needed to be done at each of the buildings and the costs associated with that, with Pathway 1 landing between that $19.4 and $20.1 million. And Pathway 2, again, keeping 4 buildings in play, but some operating efficiencies with operating 3 schools and using that middle school building for district offices and some community programming. Again, we identified how we would invest in each of those buildings, and that second pathway costing $17.9 to $18.6 million. So we said to folks, okay, given this information, now you understand the scope of work and those 2 pathways, which pathway is it that you would support? So you can see here, 36% of all respondents said I'm out at either. I wouldn't support either. 20% are saying maintain the 4 buildings, but let's operate 3 schools. 17% are saying keep operating 4 schools. 14% remain undecided. 13% are saying I'd support either of those pathways. But really, what have I just taught you? We need to move our attention to really that furthest column, that non-parent, non-staff. And what do we see again? Those no's have really remained consistent, with 57% of your general citizens, again, that makes up the majority of the folks at the polls, saying I'm not interested in either pathway. So they seem to be a hard no. 17% are saying let's move to those 3 schools. 10% saying let's keep 4 schools open. 9% unsure. 7% would go either way. So we could add that 7% up on both pathway 1 and pathway 2. Your parents, again, 29% sitting at not supporting either pathway, and almost dead even with your parents for pathway 1 and pathway 2 at 19 and 20%. So we have kind of a sense here of where folks are at. And then we did the funding support, because really it does all come down to money. So we introduced 4 different bond amounts at $16, $18, $20, and $22 million. We let folks know what it would cost per $100,000 of property value per year. And then we said, how much of a tax increase would you support through a referendum, assuming the projects included were acceptable to you? Again, we're looking just at those resident respondents. This is what I like to refer to as the mind-numbing slide, and the most important one for you to understand. So this is important to me that you understand this data. So I want to draw your attention to that bottom bar where it says all residents. So how this works is 21% of all resident respondents said, I'm in at $22 million. So that highest tax increase they were willing to support and support the projects. 5% of those who responded to the survey that lived in the district said, I'm in at the $20 million mark. So I make an assumption that since the tax increase is less at $20 million than it was at the $22 million mark, I can say that 26% of all resident respondents are in for $20 million. Then I've got another 9% that said that they're in at the 18%, which means that I've got 35% support at 18 million and 40% support at the 16 million, because I simply keep adding it up and bringing those folks along with me. Obviously, majority means I've got to cross that 50% threshold. So now when we look at this, we can see of all resident respondents, we know we need to land below that $16 million mark. But what have I just taught you? We really can't follow that bottom bar of all resident respondents, because as you can see, overrepresented of staff and parents, and we can see that your staff members are much more supportive financially than your general citizens. So therefore, really focus your attention on that top bar, and let's see where we land. So what do you see? 13% of your general citizens are in at the $22 million mark, 14% in at the $20 million mark, 21% when we get to the 18 million, and 26% support at the $16 million mark. So we're a ways away from hitting that 51% support from your general citizens. So this tells us, based on that earlier data of where people were, that lack of support at either moving to either pathway, the likelihood of having success with a referendum at this point, I think it's a long putt, and you're gonna need to look significantly less than that $16 million mark. What do I see that's, I'd say, atypical for a district? You're already sitting at majority of folks saying they're not gonna support anything. So those folks that put their fork in the ground early on, when they said, nope, I'm not interested in the district exploring, then they moved to, no, I'm not interested in either pathway. That group really remained consistent throughout the whole survey. And even here, when we started to look at tax impact, those folks continued to say, not interested in supporting a referendum at this time. When we look at your parents, you can see you've got some support, 24% support at the $22 million mark. But again, as we move along and need to cross that 50% threshold, you need to land below the $16 million mark. But remember, those folks only make up 25% of the folks at the polls. It's going to be a long putt. If you do go out, you're going to need to look at what are just some basic needs that need to be addressed. Perhaps in those 3 buildings, it looks like you've got a leaning towards eventually moving to keeping 3 schools online. But again, at this point, this data tells us your community might not be just quite ready for a bond referendum at this time. So with that, I'll pause. I want to make sure you understand the data and then open it up to any questions.
Sue, we're just coming back on to the stage here, so give us another minute here. Let's just start. I'll start with the folks online here. Steve, do you have any questions for Sue here, or comments, initial thoughts?
I understand the data. This is the first time we're seeing it. I think we need a little time to digest, but I'm quite honestly not shocked by the results, so I'll just leave it there. Thank you. Thanks, Sue.
Tanya?
Thank you, Sue, for your presentation. I too understand the data. I agree with Steve. I'm not totally surprised at where we're at. I would say I'm disheartened. I was hopeful, but there are things like the pandemic, loss of income. There's all kinds of things to me that just point to this not being the right time. And so I'm really grateful that we get to see it this way. I feel confident that people that filled this out were educated. They had, lots of information along with the questions, which makes me think of this as even more and more reliable. And something that I've always brought up to our group, and I know, we've talked about, which is you brought up basic needs, and this just reminds me of what are those basic needs? I go to the rough. There are some basic needs we need to address to continue to operate at the level we're at least currently at. So I think at our workshop meeting, we start shifting our conversation to that kind of stuff. So thank you for the data. Really no questions. I understand it. I'm not completely surprised. I think part of it is a testament to the times right now.
All right, thanks, Tanya. Vicki?
Yeah, it's a lot of information. It's great information. I love the way that it's divided out. I think that helps us a lot, gives us a lot of direction now that I think we need to look at changing things around a little bit, and at least we know where the public and our residents and staff stand, since we unfortunately can't have large gatherings and forums and informational meetings right now. So thank you, Sue.
Pat?
No questions. This gives us what we need to think about next steps.
Oh, quick group here. All right, Sue, the presentation was fantastic. It was very helpful. I don't have any questions or any questions for you. Maybe just a quick comment. Yeah, I think we have a workshop coming up. We'll be able to digest this a little bit more, and maybe we'll see where the focus goes for the workshop. I think we might want to rethink some things and shift the focus of the workshop a little bit. But given that this is kind of our first look at the information, I think we need to let it kind of sit and digest a little bit, and then we'll come back and try to hit it hard in a couple of weeks. Our needs aren't going away. I would like to make a comment there. I think we're going to need to do a better job of informing the public, I think, and getting input and getting buy-in from them. So those are my quick comments. That's all I got. So Sue, thank you. Rick, did you have anything for Sue that you want to?
Yes, Sue, I just wanted to thank you for working with us over the last few months. It's been although a virtual relationship here, it's been very helpful, very educational. I thought the presentation tonight does a really nice job of giving the voice of our community. It's the first time we've had this extensive of a survey in probably 5+ years. Probably 6 to 8 years. And so I think it's very helpful for us to take the pulse of the community. We kind of talked about how we got here, and we do have a work session scheduled, just to kind of remind the public and also our board, on December 2nd. It's a Wednesday, and it will be at 6:30 p.m. I guess the closing comments I would have, is there anything at this time that the board would be looking for in general for us to have from a finance or facilities part for you to access on December 2nd? And if you don't have anything off the cuff right now, if you could just let me and Beth know, we'll make sure you have those documents for you on the 2nd.
Hey Rick, I would just say, if we could maybe put it in kind of a pseudo board folder or something. If we can re-put kind of the 10-year master plan, the maintenance stuff, and then some of the initial budgetary things that SDS did for us.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's what we're going to have to focus on.
I agree with Pat. I could probably dig and find that, but if you have it handy, it'd be really helpful just to look at those must-have things again.
Understood. Thank you. I'll work with Steve and Mike on just kind of crafting an agenda, so that we know. And my understanding too is that we kind of want to cap the work sessions to no more than 2 hours.
Yeah, and we should consider how we're going to do that, if we're going to be in person or virtual.
Yep. Yeah, we can. I can talk to each of the board members about what the preference is, and we can go from there, I think.
Thank you, everybody.
And just for me, before I sign off, don't hesitate to reach out as you dig through the data now. I'm happy and want to continue to support you as you make decisions and move forward. So know that we're here for you.
So, and thanks for bringing that back up, Sue, because I'm guessing, with after the board members have a chance to digest and get access to the survey and look at it, I assume we're going to get that
Yeah, Sue had just sent earlier today the slides, and I'll drop those slides into the folder for all of you.
Yep.
And just a reminder, our listening community, if you're on, you can also share with everybody, is that these are recorded. And so if you go back, we'll make sure that when we communicate out, both in our minutes to the community, but also to our staff members, we'll identify kind of the minute mark within the recording so people can go specifically to school perceptions presentation. Because I think the verbal description, as you look at the slides, I think is essential in order to make the right interpretation of the data.
But just for the workshop purposes, if we get access to the survey and the board has questions and we would need Sue to interpret anything, I think we would want to get that to you, Rick, so you could get it to her
Ahead of time,
ahead
correct.
of time.
Sure.
Right? So, okay. Well, thank you very much, Sue.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, I think let's move on. We'll go to number 2, Alice drill report.
Yes, I've asked Josh Figge and Sarah Dusick to kind of represent the administrative team. We have, as you know, a mandate that every year we have to carry out 2 safety drills. We also are in the throes of doing walkthroughs with regards to the Prescott Police Department, and they'll just kind of give you an update on that. In December, we have to submit our Department of Justice overall district safety plan, so we'll be bringing that forward to you so that you can review it. This is just kind of the precursor, and anytime we run a drill by statute, we must report out to the community within 30 days. So, Mr. Figge and Sarah, it's your turn.
I thought we were going to rock, paper, scissors for it. Forfeit. So as Dr. Spikuza stated, we have mandated safety drills twice throughout the year. In addition to that, this year we've gone through kind of a more extensive look at the safety protocols we have in place, as well as just some of the general safety items. Each site went through a walkthrough with Officer Stewart, our SRO for the district, and used kind of the Georgia model that's been put out to look not only at what Alice has been having us look at, which are violent critical threats to the school or to different portions of the district, but also just general safety guidelines and preventative measures. So we did walkthroughs with him. He identified some general safety things at each level that I think each of us have taken a second look at and started to make some of those modifications. And then at all 4 levels, again, we planned with staff early in the year in our August in-service up through October to implement some of the safety protocols. Not only the ALICE protocols, but also some proactive preventative measures that deal with social emotional learning, relationships with adults, preventative things with noticing warning signs, and then each site planned out specific drills that were developmentally appropriate. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Dusick here to talk about the elementary levels first.
The key for what Mr. Figge said was developmentally appropriate, and we realized that at the K2 and 3-5 level, kids are capable of handling ALICE types of situations different than at the secondary levels. So at the elementary levels, at least at the elementary level, I went into each classroom and did a presentation with all of the students about what ALICE meant, how we do these drills to prepare ourselves if they would happen, and that they're similar to fire drills and tornado drills. We don't expect it to happen, but we always want to be prepared in the event that something would happen. And then the teachers read a book called I'm Not Scared, I'm Prepared twice to their students. And the first time they read it, they participate in an evacuation drill where they practice leaving the building similar to the characters in the story. And then the second time they read it, they do a barricade drill where they practice staying in the classroom and barricading their doors, similar to the characters in the story. The feedback we get from staff on that is it's good to have the common message at the forefront of it, and then to do it in a developmentally appropriate way in their classrooms helps the kids to understand it in a way that they aren't scared of the event and really understand that it's really just a drill like we do our fire drills and our tornado drills, and we just practice them to make sure that we're safe and prepared.
And then things developmentally just ramp up a little bit from there. The intermediate school took a similar track, so they did a two-part training. The first one was just a simple safety presentation about the ALICE protocol menu, and then the second portion was teachers leading their classroom through tours of the building, locating exits, discussing potential responses for different scenarios given the locations in the building. At the middle school level, then they start to do some active drilling and again focused on that evacuation piece. And then at the high school, unfortunately, our drill was planned for today, and as you guys know, that we were virtual today, but we started planning that all the way back in October 23rd, and we worked with staff. And again, that focus was more on preventative measures and warning signs. The drill plan for today was a tabletop exercise that again focused on not only those preventative measures, but also how do you respond to certain situations based on your location in the building. What's that ALICE protocol menu? How would you respond given the situation in your location?
All right.
Any questions for
Any
them?
questions or comments from the board?
No questions?
And just a reminder, the month of December, we will be bringing to you our full document with regards to our safety protocols, and that has to be accepted by the board so that we can submit it by December 31st, and that is now an annual requirement based on the legislative acts. Thank you.
Exciting stuff.
Thank you to the entire team. Thank you to both of you representing the administrative team.
All right, we'll move on to number 3, board review and public presentation of superintendent evaluation. So I'll just kind of give a little background here. So one of the responsibilities of the school board, and it's really technically the only managerial responsibility, is to provide oversight for the superintendent, hiring the superintendent and providing oversight for the superintendent. Part of that process is conducting annual performance reviews, which is nothing new. We do that every year. But this year we did introduce a new step into the process, which is to basically provide a written summary of the evaluation that was performed by the school board, so for the community to see. The target date usually, and you're probably wondering why it's November, and we're getting to this now, but so part of the target date for the completion is typically around that August, September timeframe to get the performance evaluation done. Since our fiscal year ends in June, it's November now. So part of the reason we're doing this in November is we're using a new template. It's a little bit of a newer process for the review process, so it took us a little longer. But ideally, we like to try to get these done sometime in that August, September timeframe. So with that, you have it up here. So I'm gonna read this verbatim. This is the evaluation summary from the board on November 18th here. So the Prescott School Board President and Vice President met with Dr. Spikuza on November 12th for the purpose of delivering the school board's annual summative review of the superintendent's work over the 2019-2020 school year ending June 30th. The unexpected challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic made this year an especially difficult yet inspirational school year. There were several high-performing areas in Dr. Spikuza's evaluation where he has provided exemplary leadership and undivided focus. Number 1, producing financial stability, transparency, and accountability while increasing the general fund to avoid short-term borrowing. Completion of the facilities planning phased initiative and proposed options for long-term master plan. Collaborative, inclusive, and fiscally responsible execution of elevating the professional pay system. Finalizing the district mission, vision, and strategic direction. Positive and extensive leadership throughout the COVID pandemic, including implementing comprehensive health and safety procedures and protocols at each site, as well as frequent and transparent updates to all staff and parents. And lastly, persistently advocating for Prescott schools to our state and county representatives for health and safety concerns, additional funding needs, and other district interests. A couple areas to continue focusing on include finalizing the district's long-range facilities plan using community input and support, maintaining emphasis and focus on student achievement and closing gaps, and building positive and collaborative employee relations. Dr. Spacuzza's fiscal stewardship of taxpayer dollars, strategic oversight of district facilities, and commitment to elevate our academic excellence is appreciated and supported by the school board. We hold high regard for his personal values and ethics and the tremendous amount of time, commitment, and dedication required to perform this very public role. We believe that he will continue to champion the effort to achieve our district goals while leading the district through the ongoing challenges stemming from the pandemic. Dr. Spacuzza is a tremendous asset to the district, and the school board looks forward to a continued and collaborative partnership with him for years to come. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the board. If there's any additional comments from the board members, I'm going to open it up. And if anybody has anything to comment on or question on, or comment on, not really question because you were a part of this, so anything to add?
This is Tanya. I would just say that I'm really thankful that this year we kind of formalized our process of evaluating Dr. Spacuzza. I've known Dr. Spacuzza for many years, and I know that he's a person that wants to achieve, he sets goals and wants to achieve those goals, and I think he really values that feedback that he gets from people. I think that this is one of the things that is our responsibility as board members, is to give him some really good quality feedback that can help him go to that next level. And I would say in all of my years on the board, this is the first year that I feel really, really confident in our process. I felt like it was thorough, and I feel like he's able to walk away with not only a really good understanding of the things that we know and recognize that he's doing really well with, as well as a few areas in which continual growth it could happen. So anyways, I appreciated working with everyone on this, and I'm happy that we were able to do that this year.
Thank you, Tanya. Anybody else? Okay, Rick, did you have anything to add or want to?
Yes, I just wanted to thank each of the board members for what I thought was a very thorough and detailed evaluation. Nothing like having your evaluation publicized as a superintendent already working in the public realm. But I did want to say that I'm both humbled by the feedback, but also appreciate the challenges that you've put in front of me for an area to improve. And I think that it's, I embrace the last sentence the most, and look forward to the continued partnership for years to come. So thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 4, reminder of weather alerts.
Let me just switch real quick here, just get you a background. Every once in a while, you would think that weather used to be probably the biggest challenge we had as we kind of hit into the winter. Hope I didn't get anybody get back on screen. But one of the challenges I wanted to share with the community is that we do have a winter weather alert, both for snow and for wind chill. Each of the school sites has been working with their teachers and also with our food service and custodians. This is a unique year, and we've learned that we can program and deliver programming through a virtual mechanism. And so one of the things I wanted to reaffirm with our families is that each school will begin to communicate out to you some of the unique practices that we'll put in place. Next month, we'll be bringing forward the next academic calendar for the school board to approve. Each year, we embed in that calendar up to 5 days for snow. And so one of the things that we believe is that we can winnow that down, because there are going to be days that we can deliver instruction virtually. A Couple challenges we have this year based on responding to COVID is that we do have an early release on Mondays. So depending on when a storm were to hit, we have two options. One is to have a 2-hour delay or to call a snow day. And now we're going to add into our portfolio or add to our quiver, we're going to add the opportunity to have a virtual learning day. Some of the details will be unique as you go into our K-2 building and then at the intermediate for grades 3 through 5, middle school and high school. Obviously the high school and middle school, many of our families and students have already experienced the hybrid and virtual learning, so it would be a replication of that with a few twists. One of the things I wanted to make sure is that given that we have the 2-hour early release at this time, and if students are still on site, we would not be calling a 2-hour late start because it would be getting here and returning home. So Mondays are going to be either all on or a virtual day. Tuesday through Friday, we'll still have the opportunity to have a late start or virtual learning. Now, one of the things that we're going to do with regards to virtual learning is that the official start time, and I'm looking out to the audience to make sure I got this right, would be 9 a.m. across the board. Did we agree on that unique time? Okay. So one of the things, what would happen is that at every site, we don't always know. We want to give our staff the access to our buildings where they have good Wi-Fi, good technology. But if it's difficult for them to come in, we want to make sure that the roads are plowed and that they can get to school safely before we execute the virtual learning. It also means that if the weather is terrible and we can't get our teachers here safely, that we will call an old-fashioned snow day. And I know that I'm not prone to do that because I still believe the best place and the safest place is here on site 5 days a week. But calling a snow day will be an option as well. So we have, just to kind of remind people, there will be snow days that will be called. We communicate that out through robocalls and also on the major television networks and KDWA. We also will have it on our website. There is the possibility for a 2-hour late start that will be contingent, obviously, on the timing of a storm, but Mondays would be exempt because of our current schedule. And then we would have virtual days. They will be set up based on very similar to what the middle school and high school are doing on Mondays. They will be not 8 hours on the screen, but it would be a shortened, compressed day, and then an opportunity. It would be more likely kind of 9 to 1, and it'll depend on the grade level where there'll be a little bit of a adjustment there. So look forward to seeing those communications coming out by each site. And just wanted to make sure that people understood some of the challenges we have based on whether or not students are still on site or in a virtual learning experience. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, we'll move on. Number 5, school board election.
And I'm going to ask Ms. Linderholm to come on down, like the Price is Right. You know, this time of year, we have an obligation to inform the public, both in the paper, and then also there are specific timelines with regards to April 6, 2021 election. And I wanted Ms. Linderholm to kind of come forward and talk through the protocol.
Good evening. Yes, just a reminder that we have 2 incumbents that will be up for election this year, Ms. Tanya Holub and Pat Block. Papers and submitting their declaration for candidacy, papers can be submitted after December 1st. And then the deadline to finalize that for expressing interest again to run is January 5th. It is open to the community at large, not by township or by sector. So that opens again December 1st. If you have any questions, you can visit or call the district office. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
That concludes information and discussion. So we are now on item J, recognition of visitors. Is there anybody at this hour that would care to be recognized? All right, before we make a motion to adjourn, I did want to say thank you for the men behind the curtain back there with the Andy and Kyle they're magicians. This really went well from up here, at least it did. I'll be curious to hear the feedback from those online but this was an excellent job for our first hybrid school board session in Prescott school history. So thank you for all the work you guys did. Really, really appreciate it. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Oh, there's three. Did you get that one, Beth? Well, we need a second, I think, don't we?
Second.
I'll second.
All right, we got a second. We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and that carries. We're adjourned.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.